The final topic that we wanted to look at, environmental considerations. Thank you very much to Gary Bradbury and Bradbury and Daniel Zweifel, if I've pronounced that correctly. So Jim, what's the potential for off-site movement of spray drift?
Right, okay. Well, I'm not going to answer that straight away because I'm the VI and I want to get my retaliation in first. So just quickly to say that MCPA is occurring in watercourses at quite high levels, particularly last autumn. And much of this, we think, is coming from grassland spraying, where farmers and operators are probably less familiar with the stewardship messages to protect water. So please, everybody listening, can you take the opportunity to emphasise the need to protect water to grassland farmers, because we need to get on top of that issue. So in terms of the question, which is lift off or whatever, this probably question is born of the mind of the great incidents in the 1970s where Mecaprop ester was lifting off crops, moving sometimes half a mile and landing on a crop and damaging it. And it was what questions were asked in Parliament on this, because I got involved in the answers. And so it was quite an important national issue. And the damage was caused by inversion currents, which is under hot conditions and still conditions. Sometimes a herbicide can lift off the crop and move in fine droplets or as a vapor and move down and then deposit. But inversion currents happen in warm conditions and with still wind. If you look at a bonfire at night, sometimes the smoke goes up, then it goes down to the ground again. And that's particles doing exactly what they do in inversion currents with herbicide sprays. So if it is warm and if it is still, you know, you probably best not to spray. And most people have seen spraying late at night. You finish spraying, you turn around, the droplets are still there above the crop canopy. And that's a condition of danger when things can move. I think the most common way of movement, of course, is wind and spray drift. And this comes down to, obviously, choice of nozzle. And I'm confident that the flat fan nozzle will be perfectly appropriate for even small weeds with the phenoxys. And once you get them a bit beyond the seeding stage, you can go to the finer end of the air induction nozzle spectrum as well to apply them. So, you know, just care in application, care where the wind's going to. So if you've got beans, leafy vegetables, or potatoes next door, spray with the wind going away from the crop rather than towards the crop. The 2,4-D ester is an interesting development, to say. Obviously, Dan did say a low volatility one, but obviously I should think it's a higher volatility than the salt. So, you know, I think particular care needs to be taken under warm conditions and still conditions, with that very still conditions with that 2,4-D ester. Would you agree, Dan?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, couldn't agree more, Jim. Thank you.
Great. We've got a question that's come through about dicamba. Again, thank you to Gary Bradbury for this one. Dicamba affecting nearby susceptible crops. And this, while the conditions for temperature inversions in the UK are very much rarer, do you think the warnings on UK labels are adequate, or could they be improved and explained? Dan, I think that might be a question for you, perhaps.
Yeah, it's. I think there's room for improvement on a lot of product labels, but that needs to be an industry-wide thing rather than a based on any one manufacturer. Dicamba, I think it's actually got a very nice fit in sort of cereal herbicide programs. It doesn't get used a great deal. There's no straight option for dicamba, and really speaking, you wouldn't be wanting to apply any more than 100 grams of active of dicamba to a crop. It's probably fair to mention that, as we said earlier, apart from the Depitone Ultra, which is our latest 2,4-D ester formulation that Jim just mentioned, all of the other formulations that we have are amine salt-based formulations, and generally have a much lower risk of volatilization. So perhaps no more than you would see with any other herbicide. SUs, again, obviously they can be very, certain crops can be very sensitive to SUs, so you would use it in a similar kind of way.
Fantastic. Well, we've just got a few minutes left to look at some of the questions that are coming through on the question panel here. We've got one from a bit of an unusual one, I think, this one from Kate Cook. I wonder whether you might be able to tackle this one, John. What are the best spring herbicides to control giant hogweed in winter wheat?
Now, yes, that's an interesting one. First of all, are you absolutely sure that it's giant hogweed?
Is this a weed that's easily misidentified then?
Yes, and we have a range of these sort of umbelliferae creeping in. Some seem to be coming in from poor management in margins and ditches and so on, often not on land that you're in control of. And there seems to be a whole range of them. We've got examples of hemlock coming in and coming into oilseed rape crops. That's a real significant risk because of how poisonous hemlock is. I think with if it is hogweed, it's giant hogweed, which I personally don't think it is, because I think giant hogweed, like poison hemlock, is not going to do very well unless you're running a proper no-till system. Then things like clopyralid and the dicloprop are good actives against it. But I think probably if it is a problem, if it is that species and it is in wheat, I think a little bit of cultivation is what's called for. If not, it won't cultivated habitat. But if you Google, I think it was Sarah Cook, I know she asked one of the questions, if you Google Sarah Cook, BCPC, umbelliferae, she gave a brilliant talk. There's a fantastic presentation on the BCPC website about identifying all these different range of umbellifera. And I think the starting point is to be absolutely sure what you're dealing with. If it's poisonous hemlock, you need to push the red button and there needs to be red flashing lights going off between you and an agronomist. If it's giant hogweed, I think it's really just down to cultivation.
Yes, by the way, Kate's come back on the questions and insisting it is giant hogweed.
I'm sorry.
Just to, but anyway, moving on. We've also got a question from Mark Howe asking about mugwort control in cereals.
Ooh.
Who'd like to take that one? Jim,
Yeah,
I'm going to bounce on you.
No, I don't know. I could try and look it up in my book, but it would be looking it up in a book, I must admit.
So have we confounded our panelists?
We did have a case of, I certainly took a call on mugwort a year or two back, and I was trying to just rack my brain as to what we used to tackle it. I've got a funny feeling it was a mix. It was either the Mercam Plus or Isomec Ultra. So it was either Mercam Plus is Mecaprop, MCPA, and dicamba. and Isomec Ultra is the one that John's mentioned a couple of times. It's got Mecaprop, Dicloprop and MCPA in. And it was mixed, it had a sulfonylurea mix as well. I'd have to just research that one just to double check which it was and look at the rates as well, but we've certainly come back to you on that.
Great. Well, no, thank you very much for that. Now, we're very nearly out of time, and I'd just like to say thank you very much. We've had a really interesting insight. We've had some fantastic questions come through as well. So I've certainly learned new things this evening, and I hope you all have too. Thank you very much for your questions. I'm sorry if you asked one and we didn't manage to get around to it, but what we'll do is we'll circulate them to our experts, and we'll try and get an answer to you. So a big thank you to our panel of experts, to John, to Jim, and to Dan for your insight and for your technical expertise. Thank you, of course, to Nufarm for their support, and to all of you for attending. You've been a wonderful, wonderful audience. And there's a quick feedback form that will follow shortly. So please fill it in and give us all top marks. No, I mean, seriously, we do want your feedback. This is the first one. This is the first technical webinar that we've done, and we want to know how to make them better. So on that note, I'll say goodbye and spray safe.